3. Hello everybody. In this video we're going to take a very quick look at rendering in Mudbox. Rendering in Mudbox is a lot easier than in other packages such as Maya. So let's get started. Here's my scene that I want to render, and when I want to create a render I will go to Render, Save Screen Image. Now, I'm not going to change any of these settings here yet because we're going to create 3 renders and then compare them. So I'll just keep all these default settings and I will say Save Image. Make sure you know where you're saving your image to. I'm just going to call this one Render 01 and we'll take a look at it. So here's my render, and what I'd like you to take note of is that we still have the grid in here, and the background is white. So let's take a look at that. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of this grid here because I really don't want that in my render. And to do that, I can simply right-click in this viewport here and uncheck grid. So now I won't have the grid in my render. In addition, I'll go to Render once again, Save Screen Image, and where it says Save Transparency, I'm going to uncheck that. Now there may be times when I want to render it with transparency. For instance, if I want to bring it into Photoshop and maybe put it into a different background, as an example, then maybe I'd want to save transparency. But for this particular example, I'm going to uncheck that, and we'll go ahead and save this image. Once again, I will give it a name. And save it. And we'll take a look at this render as well. So here's my second render, and as you can see, we don't have the grid any longer, and we don't have the transparency around here. We have the gray background, just as we saw in Mudbox. We'll take a look at a third example before wrapping this up. Lighting is another subject that we'll explore in a future video, but on a very simple level, you can already start playing with lights. All you need to do is select the L key on your keyboard and use the left mouse button, and you can adjust the default light that is already in your scene. And as you can see, I can do this very easily, moving the light around using simply the L key and the left mouse button. And perhaps we can light it to get a little bit more interesting, more interesting lighting in our render. So I'm going to go with something like this. I kind of like how I've got these areas here that are in darker shadow, and then these areas that are lighter, and I got this nice area that is obscured here where we don't really see the details. By having a light that's a little bit less direct, we can make our meshes and models pop out a little bit more. So I'm happy with this lighting. Once again, I will go to Render, Save Screen Image, and I'm going to not render it with the transparency. Otherwise, I'm going to keep all the other settings exactly the same, and I'll just say Save Image, name my render, and we'll check it out. So here's my third render. No grid, we don't have the transparency, we've got this gray background, and we have it lit a little more effectively. If we want to compare it with the original two, you'll remember that the first one that we rendered looked like this. It had the grid, it had the transparency, not very effective lighting. The second example, we got rid of the grid and we got rid of the transparency here. And then the third example, by holding down the L key and using the left mouse button, we adjusted our default light to make the model pop out a little bit more. So that's that. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it was useful.